Hello and welcome to Community Chats. I'm Ali Hammer, and today we're interviewing Jonathan Charlton, the CEO of Frameplay. Jonathan, welcome to the show. Can you start by sharing how you came up with the idea for Frameplay?
Hey Ali, thanks for having me here. It's always strange when I jump into a conversation now with anybody in Australia. I guess I get so used to being an SF and hearing the accent here. But so Frameplay, where did that come from? I'm a huge gamer. I play an inordinate amount of games still every day, but I guess it really lends to the industry that I'm in. So PUBG, going back quite a few years now. I don't know if you've played PUBG, but I have played thousands of hours of PUBG. It goes back to that, and originally Brendan Green, when he was originally designing the game, and his team, somebody in that team would have said, you know what, the character needs some sort of stimulant, they call it in the game. And someone might have had a Red Bull can on the desk, and they took the modeling from that Red Bull can and put it into the game. And you run around the game spending thousands of hours looking at a Red Bull can. I think that's a pretty good marketing opportunity. So as they progressed and the game really took off, and they had millions and millions of people who were playing this game, they Red Bull reached out and they said, hey, this is unlicensed use of IP, etc. And they removed them. They put a generic can in there. Now, as someone who's playing that, and I'm having such an amazing experience with that brand immersed inside of that actual, the game I'm playing, I've sort of looked at that and said, well, how do we take that experience that I had with that brand, and how do we get all of the technology that you expect in the media world, advertising world, measurements, attribution, everything, and how do you apply that capability to the experience I had that really benefits advertising and so forth, and reaching a gamer in a very authentic way that doesn't break the experience. And if you look at the size, 3 billion plus people who are actually playing games every day, and this is not a 15-year-old boy in a basement. Now the average age of a game is 34 and female. People don't really think of this. And I wanted to make sure that we create, as we went down this path, I wanted to make sure we create a way to reach and market to these people in a way that doesn't break their experience. And that's kind of where this came from.
Wow. Firstly, we were having a giggle together before, because I personally did not realize that 3 billion people play video games. I also had that stigma in my head of the teenage boy in the room, but here I've got the CEO of Frameplay, so you play video games, so definitely broken down that stigma for me. And how cool that the company idea began from simply playing a battle game yourself. And Jonathan, I want to ask you, why did you choose to build your business on AWS?
When you're trying to reach that many people and you're trying to build things quickly, and also keep in mind, as a startup, you need to be able to maneuver within the requirements, from technology requirements and capabilities, and having the engineering resources available. We wanted to build on something that was reliable, it was known, we could go to investors and actually say, hey, this is how we're building our stack. This is why we're choosing to build with AWS. And knowing that you can do that without having someone on the other side of the table when you're going out for rounds of investment going, well, that's crazy. Why would you do that? Going back 15 years ago, maybe not, but now it's the default gold standard. You are expected to be doing these kinds of things. So, when we look at that, we're using 22 services at the moment from AWS. And, as we do look at building a more capable and robust platform, we have no intention of changing, having a presence in AWS. Going down the path, you may have other areas that are not in AWS, but the core functionality and support system that we have in place is really, is built on that. So again, if you look at how many people we serve, when you're talking about serving, let's say at the moment we're serving hundreds of millions. We are actually hundreds of millions of individuals we see in our network. If you look at the time that people spend in the space as well, the average time in the US is 8 hours, 9 hours a week, for people. When you're spending 9 hours a week in games, and you've got several billion people doing it, and we're looking at building a capable system that's everywhere around the world, and we're a startup, and we're not talking about deploying $1 billion of development. We're talking, millions, but still, you need a system that's robust enough and capable enough to be able to record and interact with billions and billions of impressions per week or per month. So
I agree. I mean, there's nothing worse than being interrupted by technology while you're playing a game or doing something. And I'm so glad we can help out with not just, your cloud storage and hosting, but you said you're running, I think, 33 different services. 22.
Yeah. I mean, just like, if you think of like a couple of few of them, there's CloudWatch, there's Lambda, there's AppSync, CloudFront, S3. I mean, there's a bunch of different things that we actually use on that perspective. But the whole, I guess, concept of us is being able to scale quick enough and in an efficient manner until the business really matures years and years down the path, is by using a lot of these services that are available from, especially from a perspective of engineering talent understands this and can deploy these capabilities. But then, it's kind of not off the shelf, if you will, but it's there ready for us to go and scale. So we can really focus on what we're focusing about is providing the best experience that we can provide for a player, for a game, whoever's playing a game. We want to make sure that we provide them the best experience while providing that value to an advertiser. And AWS has definitely allowed us to do that quicker than going through and trying to build a lot of these core services ourselves, and we can just plug that module in.
Absolutely. I mean, I was going to say as well, like, not only are you using cloud storage and hosting, but what you're doing, which is so cool, is, looking at the analytics and management services as well, which is crucial for your business. So really cool. And Jonathan, I wanted to ask you, because Frameplay recently raised $8 million in a Series A cap raise. So first of all, congrats on that. And second of all, can you please explain to me, because my husband's in the startup world as well, what was it like raising capital in the middle of COVID?
Put it this way, raising capital is usually difficult. It's not what you see in Silicon Valley, where basically, I don't know if you watch the TV show, but the TV show is fantastic. And there's a lot of things you pick from that, but it's not usually the way it's depicted, where it's like, hey, like, people are constantly throwing cash at you. Yes, people throw a lot of money at you. But the reality is, when you are kicking off a fundraise in the middle of a global pandemic, I'm pretty sure the global economy shrunk significantly. People sort of recoiled and said, hold on a second, like, pause. But we were very fortunate. Like, I guess our approach and philosophy, where we've been gamer first, and the way that we actually approach building the technology, we were very fortunate to be able to speak and communicate and demonstrate what we were doing and why we were doing it. Now, gaming was massive before COVID, and COVID really sort of just put more attention and a spotlight on that. But how we built the technology, how it was being responded to by people who are playing the games with our technology in it, how game developers are responding to our technology, really, gave us the benefit that we raised money easier, than most did in COVID. And I can tell you now, like, I can feel for other people out there that entire capital sector disappeared completely for many. And there's a lot of businesses that definitely didn't raise capital during COVID. So for us, we're very fortunate. We stuck to our core values, and it was really around providing like good service for gaming and developers and game developers. And because of sticking to that philosophy, and also like just approaching it from the perspective of using AWS to scale these things, it made a lot of sense to investors, even in times like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing I have to say is that you guys definitely have done a really good job at gaining the trust of the developers. You've said it right the way through this interview, but having that confidence with the gamers that you're not going to disrupt the game experience is so important as a gamer yourself. And congrats on the raise. But Jonathan, to round up this interview, I wanted to ask you about data, because data is so important in so many businesses, but particularly important for you guys at Frameplay. So why is that?
Well, I guess it's a couple of things. So if you really look at even what I've just said there, like the way we sort of approach this, the scale of what we're talking about existed prior to COVID. It grew during COVID, but it's not shrinking. It's only those people who have gone into it now are growing again. When you're again talking about over 3 billion people spending hours and hours and hours a week in these environments, you start to think of what type of data is required to be monitored, modeled. How do we even ingest, what's happening here? Like, what are people seeing? What's working? What isn't working? And when you start doing that in like the scale of billions and billions of impressions, and also the fact that, I know you probably had this a bunch of times in other talks as well, metaverse, like we build core technology, like we are the picks and shovels of monetizing the metaverse when this comes up. So, as you're taking in billions of data points, data is fundamental to our business of understanding how it's operating and understanding what's working, what's not. Now, AWS has been very beneficial for us, especially having things like QuickSight, where we can actually model some of these data ingestion points really quickly to have a clear understanding of what things look like, and knowing that we could build platform relative to that and support that data model later. But just like putting out a prototype, like what does this data look like? But maybe I'm going a bit of a rant here. Data is essential, and for us, especially in the advertising industry, it's probably the most crucial thing. Like, how do we substantiate what we're billing? How do we prove that it's accurate? How do we know what somebody saw, what they did? It was the attribution to that. What's the ROI relative to that brand? And while we keep all of the philosophy in place, that's actually making sure that privacy and experience and everything is utmost for the game developer. The sheer amount of data that we collect and we have to analyze and ensure is accurate to be able to build what we build, AWS has been fundamental for us in actually understanding what we have. And that's a big problem with a lot of people. It's like understanding your data that you have and being able to interpret it. So
absolutely. As you say, it's one thing to have the data, but interpreting it is so important. And a couple of jobs ago, when I was fresh out of uni, I worked in the space of serving ads and attribution models, and there's several ways to skin a cat, but the data is so important when you're proving why your ads are worthwhile having and serving. So absolutely.
And we do, like the other part, like we differ massively from the industry from standard web technology. Like being able to understand what's happening in a three-dimensional space, where you have things like lighting and things that may obstruct a player's visibility, like viewability of whatever's happening in front of them. We are trying to convey that value. A single player can yield thousands of data points per game session. I mean, how do you really model all of that at mass to understand true value of media for the media? So, like for us, it's always going to be fundamental. It is having a reliable system that can actually be called upon to validate value when it comes to advertising.
Jonathan, I could talk about this stuff all day because I find it completely fascinating. This space is so interesting to me. Thank you so much for sharing your success, and we really love partnering with you. And I look forward to kind of following your journey and seeing what happens with Frameplay in the next couple of years. So thank you so much. If anyone has any questions, please pop them in the comment section below and we'll get back to you. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks.